Hey guys, it's Stephanie from the blog TheFarmHouseMom.com, and today we are going to do another NutriMill troubleshooting video. So if you have a NutriMill harvest, it came with a little instruction manual, and it gives a couple of troubleshooting ideas on if the motor is too hot or if you're not getting a good consistency of flour, but it does leave out a lot of unanswered questions. I know it was that way for me when I first started grinding my own grain. So we are going to start with a very simple solution. We are first just going to grind some rice, and we're gonna clean out our NutriMill harvest. So I'm gonna go ahead and place a little bowl under here. I'm gonna use my grain scoop. And so what you wanna do is turn on your NutriMill harvest, and you might hear some stones rubbing together, and you wanna back off of that until you don't hear the sound anymore. So we'll back off so we don't hear the stones rubbing. We'll take it back to a slight noise and then very gently ease off of that. So let's go ahead and put our rice in. And then when I put my rice in, I'll make it a pretty fine grind. And then toward the end, I'll start to slowly take the stones apart. So you've got your ground rice flour. So hopefully you can see how that looks. It's a really fine consistency, and that helps clean your NutriMill harvest. You might then try to grind some grain and then it's still not working, which is what happened to me, as I shared with you in my first video. So I actually had a grain of rice stuck down in between in my machine. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to troubleshoot that. So we've just pressed our little button and we've released the little grain, top of the grain hopper. There will be 3 screws. After you take the 3 screws off, you're gonna go ahead and take the top off of that. You can take this apart as well. And just kind of make sure there's no rice kernels or anything stuck in there. You're gonna wanna realign them, obviously, so you can put your screws back in. And then you can also take the 2 screws off of this. And then this just takes apart. So I had some, I'm gonna dump this over here. I had some grains of rice stuck down in here, and that was stopping me from being able to turn the knob, and my grain consistency was very coarse. It was not fine at all. So you can go ahead and check that, make sure everything's good, nothing's stuck in there, and then we'll just place it back on, put it all back together. Okay, so just making sure this is together, and you can still hear a noise when you turn it, and we'll just place this back together and screw that back in as well. All right, now that we have the top of the grain mill, we've got the hopper back together and flour all over ourselves, we will check out our stones. So you're just going to want to pull the stone out and then just kind of maybe run your finger around there a little bit. Just make sure there's no rice or just anything stuck in there that might be stopping the stones from rubbing together. So that's what fixed my NutriMill. That's what fixed my grain consistency problem. And so maybe for you as well. All right, so we will place our rice aside, and then we'll go ahead and let's get a different bowl. I also have 2 screen sifters. One is a 60 and one is an 80. And so we're gonna grind our hard red wheat on the finest setting we can, and then we'll just sift it a little bit too, just so you can see the different consistencies, what is gonna come out of here. And so I've said before, you're not gonna get a super fine commercial type consistency out of your NutriMill Harvest. It's gonna be a little bit coarser than you would for like an all-purpose flour. So when I bought my NutriMill, I'm like, I never have to buy flour again. This could be so great. But like most things, you know, you still need to supplement just a little bit. So when I'm doing my sourdough starter, I like it to be nice and bubbly. And so I do buy organic all-purpose flour from Azure Standard. So it seems like I'll buy a 25-pound bag and that'll last me a couple of months. And so I'll supplement when I'm making something that I want a little bit lighter. I will supplement it with some, maybe half of the stone ground and then half of all purpose. And if you aren't looking for like a super light and fluffy, if you like the denser breads, which personally I like more of a denser, it's tastier to me. I feel like you could use your NutriMill for your sourdough starter for everything. With a whole grain sourdough starter, your sourdough starter is not going to rise as much and be as bubbly, but it's still gonna work just like any sourdough starter would. So, all right, let's go ahead and work on our grain consistency. So I'm gonna turn it on. Nothing's rubbing together. You do notice that a little bit of that rice came out. So nothing's rubbing together, so let's turn it slightly so it's rubbing. All right, so and it's slightly rubbing together. And then we'll back off. And we'll go ahead and start adding our grain. And right when I put it in, I'm gonna make it really fine. Okay, so we are done grinding our flour, and if you noticed, I put the flour in right away and then I turned the knob clockwise, and that starts to make it a lot finer. And then you can really tweak it. You can turn it so tight that hardly anything comes out. So, which is what I do. I turn it pretty tight and then I back off a little bit until I feel like until I feel very, very soft flour. So, hopefully you can see this, but this is the consistency I got after I pulled the bowl away, and it is really fluffy, very fine. I can't really feel a lot of texture with my fingers. It's pretty soft, very soft. I'll go ahead and sift just a little bit with my 80 grit sifter. Is it called grit? I don't know. 80, size 80, I guess. I'm thinking of sandpaper maybe. So I'm gonna go ahead and sift just a tablespoon of that. All right, so you saw how much I put in, and then this is the amount of coarser grain that we got out. And then this is what came through the sifter. The commercial sifters are, obviously very fast, and they're at a much higher, a much closer screen. So you're going to get very, very, very fine, and almost all of the grain is, almost all of the kernel part of the wheat berry is going to be taken out. But our whole point of having our NutriMill grain is to access the nutrition that is coming out of a whole wheat berry. I definitely do bake, even baked goods, cinnamon rolls, biscuits, cakes, anything that will come out. So I will bake with this without sifting it. If you feel like you're looking for a really, really fine white type of bread, you're gonna wanna do half all-purpose, half stone ground, or perhaps you want even a higher percentage. So this is the first bowl that I did before I pulled it out and got the grain that I wanted. So I'll sift this with the 60. Really not much of a difference as far as any of the grain that's left behind. This still feels very, very soft. So you may have your first grind before you turn it down. It may seem like it's a little coarser, but I think it's so minimal that you have enough time to just put your wheat berry in. Yes, it will start grinding at a little bit of a coarser grain before you kind of wrench it really quickly, but I feel like it's very minimal. So you can grind it if you want and then adjust and get what you want, and then just kind of pull it away, and then you could have your whole bowl full of the consistency of your flour that you want. Or you could be like me and it's all pretty close, and you can just get all of your grain ground at once and just start baking with it. If you are just starting to bake with your NutriMill harvest like I was last year, it does seem that there's just a bit of a learning curve, and I'm especially using it for all of my sourdough recipes. And so sourdough behaves differently depending on the temperature, the humidity level, and so don't be afraid to just use your common sense. If you're making a recipe and the dough seems entirely too wet, your sourdough starter may just have a higher hydration, and you may just need to add a little bit extra flour. So it's pretty forgiving, and my favorite thing about the NutriMill, it's really quick, it's beautiful, it can sit on my counter, and all of the nutrition in this whole wheat berry is kept, and then when I want to grind something fresh, I can grind for every day, for every recipe. Sometimes I will do enough flour for the week if I feel like I'm gonna be busy, or if I'm baking quite a few things in the same day or two. But really, it's convenient enough to where you can just, for each recipe, you can just grind the amount of flour that you need. If you're looking for something a little bit more fine, you can definitely add some of that all-purpose flour, and that might kind of ease your transition from baking with just all-purpose or bread flour. It might kind of ease you into being able to incorporate more of a coarser stone ground. I hope this quick troubleshooting video helped you guys. It is a little tricky, like I said, kind of getting the consistency that you like, and then adjusting to the recipes, adjusting from all-purpose flour to just using stone ground. But I think it's worth it, most of all for the increased nutrition in your food and your recipes for you and your family. So thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a great day.